Hello, Conrad and Lucy and Caleb. I hope you're enjoying these Fantastic Four stories as much as I am. I think they get better and better, and today's story is no exception. Again, we find the Fantastic Four in the company of Submariner. But this time, instead of fighting against him, they're fighting with him against a new undersea villain that I'll introduce to you in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and get started with this new adventure. Here's the front cover. The editor is telling you to see the fabulous FF for the very first time, all fighting on the side of Submariner. And look here, here's the new villain. We'll find out more about him later. All right, the fabulous Fantastic Four find themselves fighting side by side with Submariner. But first, we find the Fantastic Four inside their laboratory. And look what's on the exam table. Wow, it's a big sea creature. The Thing is impressed. He says, "Holy cow, what's that? Last year's winner of the Miss Yancey Street Beauty Contest? I don't think so." Sue explains it's a strange form of sea life which was discovered yesterday, Ben. The Coast Guard sent it to Reed for study. Reed says it's obviously a creature from the deepest part of the ocean. Something very unusual must have happened down there to drive it to the surface. Johnny says, "I'd like to see the bait they used to hook that baby." There we go. Now you can see a full view of that sea creature. Look at those big eyes, that big mouth. It's a funny looking creature for sure. All right, Thing says maybe there's a picture of the blame thing in this encyclopedia. I'll look under N for nutty monsters. Reed says, "Forget it, Ben. You won't find that specimen listed in any reference work. Even this sub-ionic analysis structure scope can't furnish a clue to its origin." Sue says if it comes from the deepest part of the ocean, Reed, isn't that the area where Submariner dwells? Johnny says, "Hey, that's right. Do you think old Flathead had anything to do with that overgrown goldfish?" Well, we're going to find out. But first I wanted to point out, Lucy, did you notice Sue Storm's new hairdo kind of sweeps around? Very lovely, I think. Reed says, "Why don't you just fly over the coastline, Johnny, and see if you can spot anything unusual there?" "Will do, Reed," and he flames on. Ben says, "And see if you can do it once without that nutty flame on yell of yours." Ben's always complaining about Johnny's hollering flame on, but doesn't keep him from hollering it's clobbering time. The Torch says, "Good old Ben, he's only happy when he's griping about something. I'm glad it's starting to get dark. I've been wanting to try a new little stunt I dreamed up." So he flies out as the sun is setting and it's getting dusky dark. What's he gonna do? Ooh, look at that. He says, "Wow, it works perfectly. By concentrating my flame just right, I can create instant flares. Wouldn't he be a hit at the 4th of July or New Year's Eve fireworks displays?" Yeah. And as luck would have it, by the light of his flare, the Torch sees a shrouded figure climbing out of the water onto a pier. Flamin' fireballs! He's flying right up into the air. What a strange contraption. No, he just soared high enough to land easily on the dock. That outfit he's wearing has some kind of flying gadget attached to it. What an interesting invention. But then when she unzips the shroud, Johnny realizes now he's taken the cloak off. Wait, it isn't a he, it's a blue-skinned female. That means she's one of Submariner's race. And so he swoops down with the speed of a blazing thunderbolt. The Human Torch grabs this woman. He says, "Okay, little lady, you're coming with me." Seconds later, he flies through the window. And of course, it's open, right? The torch says, "Reed's hunch was right, kiddies. Look what I found climbing out of the sea." Sue says, "I remember her. It's Lady Dorma, the noblewoman who loves Prince Namor." Do y'all remember that story? When we met Lady Dorma, who is infatuated with Submariner, but of course Submariner is attracted to Sue Storm. Lady Dorma says, "I still love him. I came to your wretched surface world where one such as I cannot even breathe without an artificial device in order to enlist your aid." Reed asks, "You want our help?" He's surprised. I am too. She says, "Yes, and if you refuse me, Submariner will die, and I shall be to blame." Thing says, "I don't trust that smooth-talking tomato." Why is he calling her a tomato? She isn't red, she's blue. Maybe she's a smooth-talking blueberry. No, I don't think so. All right, but to continue, Ben says it might be a trap. But Sue is interested in her story. She says, "What is it, Dorma? What has happened?" "A short time ago, Prince Namor found his people again and returned to us in triumph, acclaimed by one and all." And as he's floating by in his chariot, he says, "I shall never leave you again, my subjects, for this is where the Submariner belongs." But, as Dorma continues, during the first week of his new reign, disaster struck. Our people's high priest demanded an urgent audience. And then he said, "Sire, remember the ancient legends which tell that one day an enemy will come to ravage fair Atlantis. Such an enemy is even now almost at our gates. He calls himself Attuma, the one from the murky depths. He has enlisted an army of thousands. He claims your throne. His strength is said to equal your own, sire, and in savagery and barbarism he far exceeds you, my liege." And there we see Attuma saying, "Death to Submariner. Only Attuma will wear the crown of Atlantis." And look at his mighty trident. Look at his soldiers that he has gathered around him. Yes, it is indeed a mighty army, and Attuma himself is a mighty warrior. Dorma says, "Attuma, from the murky depths, how I cursed the day I first heard that horrible name." Reed says, "A civil war, thousands of fathoms below the surface of the sea, and yet it's not impossible." Sue says, "But what of Namor? What happened to him? Tell us, Lady Dorma." Dorma says, "The words do not come easily to my lips, surface girl, for in truth it is I who am to blame." When the battle started, Submariner was like a god, fearless, bold, ever at the forefront, ever in command. And as he looks over his wall, he says, "Attuma dares not cross the deep divide. We are too strong." And so he's got a moat built around his palace, and Attuma's forces are on the other side. Dorma continues, "It was then that my world crashed down around me." She says to Submariner, "My lord, do not expose yourself to their arms this way. If anything should happen to you, my heart..." And Submariner says, "Hold your tongue, woman. Never speak thus of love to me." And so Submariner seems to spurn Lady Dorma in the heat of battle when he is focused on his opponent. Sue says, "You offered him your love and you felt he had scorned you. But what then?" Dorma continues, "I was hurt, heartbroken. I wanted to humble him, to bring him to his knees. And so, may Neptune forgive me, I betrayed him to Attuma. Using my authority as a noblewoman of the realm, I ordered the guard away from a vital outpost, allowing Attuma's hordes to crash through." She says to Attuma, "Remember, you vowed no harm would come to Namor." But Attuma breaks his word. He says, "Bah, witless female, what do vows mean to the mighty Attuma?" And so she had made a deal with Attuma that she would let him in if he would not harm her love. But he, of course, is not going to keep that word. He's out to defeat Namor and to capture the kingdom. She continues to explain, "Within seconds I realized what a dread thing I had done, what a terrible menace I had unleashed upon Atlantis, upon the world." And so we hear the voice of Attuma's soldier saying, "Death to Submariner, hail Attuma." Submariner realizes that Attuma has smashed through my defenses. The advantage is his. And see these missiles that are coming toward him. But the mighty Namor, with his great fists, strikes at the missiles and tosses them back. He says, "But a prince of the blood is not so easily defeated. Even though naught but death awaits me, I shall die as I have lived. I'll fight until the end." Dorma says, "Namor was everywhere, fighting, commanding, inspiring. His power was awesome, his strength unfailing. But though his legions fought valiantly, there was only one Submariner, and Attuma's hordes inched closer and closer and closer." There they are. Dorma finishes, "I couldn't bear to see any more. I fled in panic, wanting to help, but not knowing where to turn. And then I thought of you." Johnny says, "Namor is our sworn enemy. Why should we want to help him?" Dorma says, "But it's not just him. If Attuma triumphs, nothing will stop him. He'll attack your surface world next." Sue appeals to Reed. She says, "Reed, I know how you hate Submariner, and perhaps you have good reason. And yet, I always felt that if things had been different, you and he might have been friends." Reed says, "Save your breath, darling. We will help Namor. In fact, I have a new preparation which will enable us to fight underwater more effectively than ever before." The thing says, "It better not taste like cod liver oil, like your last blasted serum." I've never tasted cod liver oil. Have you? I understand it tastes really bad. So we do hope that this is easier to take than Reed's last serum. And in fact, as he explains, this isn't a serum, Ben. It's an oxo spray. It supplies the skin with a layer of self-perpetuating oxygen, enabling one to breathe underwater for hours at a time. Wow, I think that's amazing. If such a thing existed, we could spray our bodies with it, and then we could go swimming and just swim underwater as long as we wanted to. But such a thing only exists in the comic books, right? And of course the thing has to complain. He says, "That's what you say. It smells like a blame dose of DDT to me." Well, that means bug spray. And I have smelled bug spray, and it does smell terrible. But Reed says, "Don't take my word for it. Try it out." And so he sprays his companions with the oxo spray. And look at what the thing does. He sticks his head into an aquarium. He says, okay, okay, since there ain't any oceans in this room, I'll use the fishbowl. Hey, how about that? It works. I think that's neat. And then Reed explains to Johnny, you'd better be careful. Your flame will be a bit harder to control with the extra oxygen which has permeated your skin. And so Johnny flames on. He says, I see what you mean, Reed. And then Reed says, and now let's get to our bathysphere at the dock as soon as possible. Every second may be vital. And so there they are at another of Mr. Fantastic's fantastic inventions, this bathysphere that will travel underwater. And the thing says, imagine us going to rescue Namor. We ought to have our heads examined. Johnny says, maybe you could be excused from this mission, Ben. Ben says, bite your tongue, kid. Wild horses couldn't drag me away. For all his complaining, the thing wants to go on this adventure because he's always ready for a fight. So finally they are underwater and traveling through the sea, and Dorma says, I can direct you to the exact spot. Reed says, that will be fine, Lady Dorma. We're not apt to find any roadsides down here. And so the thing says, hey, Stretch, quit stealing my lines. Usually the funny lines come from the thing, not from Mr. Fantastic. Wow, look at this picture. This looks like they're really underwater. Down, down, down into the strange, silent world of the ocean depths go the intrepid Fantastic Four, accompanied by the lovely, strong-willed Lady Dorma, none of them suspecting the shocks and the dangers which await them. And there is a full view picture of their underwater voyage as they travel to find Submariner and Attuma. But one of Attuma's ever vigilant patrols sights the silent bathysphere, and the order is given, the order to attack. And look, there's a catapult that shoots a boulder at the bathysphere. Whoom! It bounces off the submarine. What will happen? And Thing leaves the porthole. He says, this is as good a time as any to find if Stretcho's nutty oxo spray really works. All right, who's the wise guy? Who's the wise guy? And he leaps out looking for a fight. And Johnny says, look out, Ben. Someone's hurling huge boulders at you. He says, big deal. All I got to do is catch one like this. And now, whoom! It's their turn to look out. Bam! He slings that boulder right back at him. And the boulder smashes the catapult. Ben says, oh, now ain't that a shame? The hill tumbled down on their little catapult, and it probably took them weeks to build it with our little erector set. All right. You know, Conrad, I bet you could build a catapult with your Legos. What do you think? And there's another of Attuma's soldiers. He says, I know not who those intruders are, but they must be stopped in the name of Attuma. And the other soldier says, quick, one burst of your Explo grenade will stop anything that lives. Look, he's got a crossbow, but the bow has a grenade at the end of it. He shoots it off, but before the lethal weapon can find its target, a thin burst of flame shatters it into nothingness. Oh, the Fantastic Four have powers that can stop the forces of Attuma. Johnny says, this is great. Reed's oxo spray increased my flame so much that I can actually blaze underwater. These bozos won't be able to see if I steam up the water around them. And so his hot flame turns the water to steam and blinds Attuma's soldiers. Then Johnny says, just in time, I'd better stick close to the others. My flame only lasts for seconds down here. The thing says, nice work, Buttercup. I knew you'd learn something if you hung around me long enough. And so Johnny and Ben go swimming off. Well, here comes an arm in the shape of a number 4. Johnny says, where did Reed go? Oh, there he is. Ben says, get a load of that. How corny can you be? He's using his arm like a flare, only instead of the flare, it's his arm that signals it's time for the Fantastic Four to assemble. Reed says, we'll leave the bathysphere where it fell. We'll have a better chance of getting to Attuma without it. Ben says, hey, how long will that spray gizmo of yours let us breathe down here? Reed says, about another half hour, so we've got to move fast. What can they do in only 30 minutes? Well, let's find out. Dorma says, why do we delay when there is need for haste? Sue says, he's waving us back. He must see danger ahead. See, Mr. Fantastic is stretching out and looking around to see what's happening. And he says, enemy patrols all around us. We need some form of camouflage, a way to disguise themselves. Seconds later, a large, silent undersea form glides past the patrol, attracting no attention with its natural-looking appearance. Do you see Attuma's soldiers? But what's this up here? It looks like a stingray. They wouldn't suspect that it really is Mr. Fantastic, who stretched his body out to look like a giant stingray, but he's created a pocket where the others can ride along. Sue says, we made it past them, Reed. I never thought you could do it. But Reed says, can't keep it up much longer, Sue. The weight is almost unbearable. We've got to think of something else. Thing says, okay, we'll all go on a diet. Huh. Well, I don't think they have time to diet fast enough. And so, the Thing just jumps out. He says, whoa, hold everything. I've got a better idea. Dorma says, wait, you're diving toward one of Attuma's deep sea tanks. What's he going to do? He's diving down? And then he reaches through the door and just pulls out Attuma's soldiers. He's saying, you're telling me? End of the line, kiddies. Everybody out. And with his great strength, he just tosses everybody out of the Attuma submarine. Johnny says, good work, big buddy. They never knew what hit them. And the Thing says, let's face it, Junior, when I go into action, it's like sheer poetry. And so Lady Dorma swims toward the submarine, and Mr. Fantastic helps Sue get into it through his arm. She says, now we can sneak by in their own ship. But when they approach Attuma's army, they say, wow, look at all the reinforcements heading for Attuma. The Submariner won't have a chance. But the Thing says, you kidding? He's got us. That's like buying himself a hunk of instant victory. Well, we can hope so, can't we? For once, we're rooting for the Submariner and, of course, the Fantastic Four. And when we come back, we'll find out how they do against Attuma and his hordes. All right? I can't wait to hear the rest of this story. How about you? Until then, I send y'all lots of love. Bye-bye.